into this Memo 3 and the illustrative plan. Yes, we are live, yes. And both during Design Week, which was October 30th through November 2nd. September 30th to October 2nd. Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's good. And at any rate, yes, we had a lot of work going into this and a lot of refinement since. We've tried to be really responsive to people's comments. We have heard what owners had to say. A lot of them came to Design Week. We've had comments from the PAC, of course, before and during and after. And we feel that this is representative of the goals and objectives and the vision statement that was set out in Memo 1. And you may want to correct us on that or tell us how we can better meet those goals and vision. We also feel, though, that it's, I feel that Lawrence has put together a really wonderful plan that is aesthetically pleasing in terms of presentation, but also in the layout and design for a neighborhood. And we've displayed them on the back wall, and we'll be showing them on the PowerPoint as well. Also, though, it's not just a pretty picture. It is based on our existing conditions that we talked about in Memo 2. And that includes some pretty challenging topography and water resources that we have in the area, as well as access to the highway, existing land uses, and previous plans. So a lot of information went into this, and so when you see the lines drawn on the plan, know that there's a lot of reason why those are the way they are. We have created a street network, and this plan is really good in defining how this will provide a safe transportation for people in the neighborhood and between the neighborhoods, connectivity within the area, and also to neighborhoods to the north and south, and trying to provide access across the highway in a reasonable manner. And another thing about our street system here, and Lawrence will talk more about this, is he wants the streets to be a place for social interaction as well as for transportation. So a place where people might bump into each other and so forth and be able to stand and be comfortable in having a conversation. This is going to be a flexible plan because we are showing for a large part mixed-use areas, and mixed-use areas. Well, you're shooting your hand. Just flip it over. There you go. There, perfect. Yeah. Okay, we have a lot of this kind of reddish brown, purplish color mixed use in for this plan. Might include light industrial. It might include retail, housing, and we're hoping that because of this flexibility, it will adjust, and the city can adjust it over time as the demand arises and as the property owners have interest in development. So it is an idea based on all these uses being combined in a way that they have a consistent character in terms of the look and that they can utilize this street system well. But it is subject to change. It also can provide space for new public facilities if we have the demand and if the city can find means to support them. That might include a new school or a Boys and Girls Club or parks and recreation, maybe ball fields, a meeting place. So, again, I just want to stress that this is a long-range plan. This is going to be up over decades. How quickly it occurs is going to, again, depend on the city's actions. Part of it isn't even annexed yet. We have zoning and other regulations that we can use. And also it depends on, of course, the desire of the property owner, what they wish to do with the property, and the market demand. Speaking of market demand, we got a $50,000 grant to study economic opportunities, available lands, and affordable housing. So we're going to be starting it very soon as one of the first steps to doing our campus plan today. So this will give us more information to refine this mix of uses. Also, we have our master plan for starting. We just got proposals from consultants, and we're going to be starting that right after the first of the year. And this will help us in deciding what facilities we need in the community and give us an update on that, and which of those facilities might be appropriate for this particular neighborhood. So, one last thing I want to mention is that because it seems like, oh, we already have a lot of neighborhoods in this town, and we're trying to bolster up our development in our boroughs. But, we have to be responsive, unfortunately, in our community, to the possibility that we might also have a setback like a major catastrophe, such as impending earthquake and tsunami. And so, it doesn't hurt to have extra land that's planned for development should we need to relocate and rebuild these parts of the community. So it's kind of, I don't want to be negative, but I think it's also just one more reason that we do need to look beyond current inventory of vacant, commercial space, or the number of vacant lots we have in the community that might be available for development. So, what we want to do, who came to this development, and how is our next topic. And so today, what we really want to hear from you is what you think of this in terms of a neighborhood that you would like to be part of, or that you think would contribute to the community, and whether or not it meets the vision goals we set. So I'm going to turn this over now because we want most of the time to be for your opportunity to discuss and give us comments. So Kirsten and Lawrence will do presentations, and we'll turn it over to questions and comments.
Thanks. Again, thanks to everyone for being in the room today. Thanks for joining us. And again, hail, wind, storms, thunderstorms, and here. So thank you. It's great to be in the room with you. It was just about, I guess, 6 weeks ago that we were downstairs in the Science, and it was, it was weeks away downstairs in the Science, and that was an incredibly informative week. So building on your guidance from our faculty school here in this room today, we're talking a lot about workforce housing. We went to kind of the map, joint anxiety, if you will. And one of the things that we'd like to get your feedback, we need for the standard critical path for the project, what we need your feedback from today is just the basic land use framework and the basic transportation connection with rates. We will continue to discuss refinements around how do we write down the cost of housing for workforce housing. That will come up next as step 7 in the task pathway, which is the financing. But today we need your guidance on that basic framework, and with the map stuff that your memo, it's that one that looks later to see. But that is built upon this lot-by-lot diagram Lawrence did, and I must say again what a pleasure it is for me to work with Lawrence Smart, who's both an architect and can work at the lot scale as well as the regional scale. So you have actually a very detailed plan in front of you that's built from the lot up, which is just really super normal. So I want to just say how pleased I am to be working with Lawrence, and pleased that you selected him to work with us in your community. The objectives for today, if you could just put that one, the next slide on, Deb, thanks so much. If there's a clicker, I'll use that, otherwise I'll have to keep bugging you a little bit here with the prompts. But the main objective is to consider these land use and transportation system elements, as I mentioned. I'll give just the briefest of recaps on Community Design Week, because really the outcome of Community Design Week is the map. But I'll touch on a couple of key points that came through for us. The comment forms in the survey, that was kind of an add-on, so I couldn't resist, since we had all of this information, it wasn't in the scope, but we put it online as well for some folks to participate. We got really great qualitative feedback. We had about, I can't recall, 10 to 15 completed surveys online. But it's nice to have folks who just aren't in the room who are able to chime in as well. So we are very in depth with the property owners during community design week and also members of the public, but then also a few more people participated online. So we need from you also, just not as urgent, I would say, but any final feedback on Memo 1, which is the vision and goals, that we can continue to tweak those as we go along. So there's not as much pressure on that. And then any final comments, same thing on Memo 2, which is the existing and future conditions. I'll touch on that in a moment, but really just emphasize again what we need your feedback on today is any changes you would have us make to land use and transportation diagram so we can go into the cost of implementation task. So that schedule diagram, if you could just hit the next button, Deborah, thank you so much. This is a schedule that you have seen in your materials. Again, we are down for Community Design Week in September and October. We are here today for the Land Use and Transportation Network, and then in February we'll be back with you on the financing and implementation strategies. So my colleague DJ Heffernan is queued up and ready to go to help with the cost estimating. We'll come from Reese and Associates as well as the financing and phasing at a very high level. Again, this is sort of a 50-year plan, so it's not master planning which street will go in first, but it's a high level for the city with you in consideration. On Community Design Week, if you don't mind just clicking there, Deb, so just a few images. The city also invested during Community Design Week, and Gainesville has to come up. Part of the cost is shared with this project with the grant funds from the state, and also the city invested, matched the funds to bring James Rojas up, who is a really nationally renowned Latino urbanist scholar, but also just cross-cultural engagement of all types, and helped the city kick off its 5th-year comprehensive plan update that Deb was mentioning. So we had a number of events through that week. And then also pictured there is just Lawrence's careful work working with property owners who brought in their mouse. He was really working lot by lot on trace all through the week. And special thanks out to Ron Rubin, who really gave us his space on Nelscott Strip, so we were able to be right there for walk-in and drop-bys. So I thought it was a raging success because of the participation. We were able to have a workshop in Spanish at La Roca, thanks to owner Hilario for hosting us there. Again, the property owners and community members helped make it real. I would say the workforce housing still came through very strongly. There's no change on that. Then if you could click just the next slide, the transition into just recapping the vision and then the goals. And this is in your memo number 1 that I believe you received in your packet. But the main idea here of this of the study is to connect both sides of Highway 101. So to look at planning for what we may not always call GAP, the lesser developed parts of 101, which are within the city limits of urban growth boundary. So connecting the two sides of the highway, building on the natural assets of the area in the existing Nelscott community, which is lead hurdle, which we only want to build on and accelerate the vitality of that area. And then also the connectivity. PAC members here have emphasized for us how important the walking and the biking, the multimodal transportation, or the choice taking transit, so not every trip will have to be made by car. So Lawrence will touch on that, the quarter-mile neighborhood concept on the diagram, so that making sure that there's some amenities, whether it's a park or a shop, but some destinations for future neighborhood residents to walk to, so they have choices other than just automobile. On the online participation, I will say that safe routes to school, trails, and parks came out very strongly. Again, still the workforce housing. If you could click on the goals, Deb, just that next slide. These are the headlines of your goals, and this again was in Tech Memo 2, and we reviewed it in depth at our last meeting, but goals around livability and housing, that includes the workforce housing, lifelong learning, this is really an educational hub in this district with the high school, the school complex, and also the Oregon Coast Community College, of course. Recreation and health. During Community Design Week, there's a lot of emphasis on fun, making a place for people, for community, for families to enjoy and walk to. So in the center of the diagram, you'll see that there is a plaza concept that is meant to be a future gathering space for the new community residents. We had involvement of high school students and also some younger elementary school children that were just delightful. And I remember one saying that there should be places for us to learn in the district. So like a monument, something where so that people can stop and learn about the history of Nelscott. They're just so smart. And then again, the transportation choice, the connectivity, and building upon the ecology and natural resources of the area. So this is high level, just to recap on the goals. Tech Memo 1, I'll just pause there and see if there's any comments that you would have to add or change in Tech Memo 1 at this time. Again, no pressure. It's not the main assignment for today. If there's no changes, then we'll just keep going forward according to that direction. Okay, so hearing none, and that is okay. Let's just click forward to Tech Memo 2. And the only change that we made based on our conversations early in the fall was to add information about Baldy Creek, and that came from, I can't remember who is a counselor or planning commissioner, but folks are really surprised that Baldy Creek is such an asset. So Lila Bradley helped us with information from ODOT survey during the 101 construction project. And just recapping from the memo, Baldy Creek is classified as a fish-bearing stream by Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. Species include adult and juvenile cutthroat trout, Pacific giant salamander, juvenile lamprey, and crayfish. So as surprising as it is from an urban stream right next to the highway, it does seem viable to ecological and restoration so that it can be a really community as well as an ecological asset. So that's the one change we made on page 5 to the technical memorandum number 2. Did anyone else see anything in Tech Memo 2? Folks have busy lives, so I'm not sure you poured over it again. It was from we covered it in a previous meeting, but we're supposed to finalize and kind of put those memos to bed as we continue. So any other changes at all? If not, then I hope, Lawrence, have you been able to join us back? Lawrence was trying to get that. Sometimes, okay, great. So sometimes the webcam doesn't work just because of connectivity between here and Berlin, but he is on the phone with us. And Lawrence, at this time, if there are no other questions or comments from PAC members about the purpose of today, I would just ask Lawrence to kind of dive into a brief overview of the diagrams. So PAC members, any questions before we transition to Lawrence, or Richard, anything else to add from what you've heard, Deborah, and what you cover? Okay. All right. Thanks. I should say thank you to the project management team members of the city as well as Allison and Lila and Richard for commenting on the earlier versions. We've had significant discussions since their comments, and it's really helped us to refine some of our thinking about the district. So we'll touch on some of that today. Okay, I'll turn it over to Lawrence then. Sir.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I wish I could be there with you in person, but this is a pretty exceptional little piece of technology that allows us to virtually be there. And of course, I've been coming to Lincoln City for many, many years and know this so well that I feel it's fun to here. So I think we're going to transition first to the next slide, would be the master plan. This is the plan that we developed during design, as Tricia was saying back a couple of months ago, and it was worked on a little bit further afterwards, but for the most part, all the concepts and implementation of this plan was established right there, right there in the Nelscott Strip, with people coming in day and night, us working day and night, preparing this plan, walking the site, going up into the hills, up and down the roads, up and down the highway. Sometimes people would come in, neighbors would come in, and they'd say, come on out, we want to show you what our area looks like, and we would tour it with you. So there's a lot of on-the-ground local knowledge that is filtered into this plan. Let's start by orienting you all to the plan. Let's first point out, if you can do that with the arrow, Nelscott Strip. So right down by 32nd Street. The Nelscott Strip is, really the heart of this whole neighborhood, one of the pearls, one of the great historic places of all of Lincoln City. And with the recent renovations to the street and realignment of 32nd into a four-way intersection, what we call in town planning terms Main and Main. Retailers think of Main and Main as really the center of a village, the center of a town. That realignment really has great potential for strengthening not only circulation in the area, but strengthening the retail on the strip. Also, the clear definition of the slipway that was done by ODOT. It's excellent work at maintaining that little strip of parking in front of their shops. Parking right in front of the front door of a shop, if it's just one little thick like this, or on-street parking, is the hallmark of what makes a great Main Street. So you have a little piece of the Main Street there. Moving up the street just to get further oriented, let's go all the way up to 23rd Street. That is a second location now where we've heard that there's some possibilities of some realignment and reconnection across the highway. Maybe someday there could be a connection all the way up to the street that is up in the woods.
Bard.
Forgetting the name of it at the moment.
Bard Road.
Right. Thank you. So in a way, that has another potential of being a kind of a crossroad of Main and Main. Let's look at the whole street network here then. You'll notice that there is a rather important street in particular that we are dubbing Foothills Boulevard. And going from 32nd up to 23rd and rising up the hill, we found an alignment. We've looked fairly carefully. We've had our engineers at Reeson Associates verify this. And of course, when you go into final design, there might be slight adjustments to that. But it looks as if there is the potential of bringing a new north-south running road parallel to the highway, linking, first of all, 32nd to 23rd. But furthermore, linking further on beyond that. So if we go to the north, we're showing all of about 4 or 5 different possibilities of ways to connect up into the existing street network in the existing neighborhoods. Now, all eventually flow out to Devil's Lake Road, which is a key way around much of the city today. Many people locally, in particular, know that Devil's Lake Road is a way to get around, but that happened to be on the highway all the time. It's rather similar, this Hills Boulevard, if you will. It's similar to Fleet Avenue. Going down to Fleet Avenue, it would also travel south and eventually make its way to the bottom of Lincoln City. But it's rather similar to the street that is on the west side of the highway going north from the Olivia Beach, Nelscott area. That is a little back road that people know if you're local. Outsiders often don't know about it, but they find that little way. So that kind of, let's call them capillaries. Capillary streets that are off of the big arterial of the highway really start to provide that kind of local access and a variety of different ways to get around without always having to spend every trip going down to the highway. Now that same network that we're reconnecting or connecting up with this Foothills Boulevard, going down to the south and going up to the north, it accesses a lot of great things. Like further to the south, just a little bit south of the study area, you have the community college, you have the elementary school and the high school. So it becomes an important connector in many ways. In terms of orientation, I want to also point out the black dashed line, which is the study area that we have been assigned to work within. In a few places we couldn't help but look at those connections that are just outside of the study area as well. Let's next go to the regional open space. You can see up to the northwest that Actis Creek can connect now all the way down through up to the highway, along Baldy Creek. Now we have found a couple of different connection points that can make its way out to Spyglass open space, and eventually even down to Schooner Creek Road. So all of a sudden you also have this trail system that begins to connect. So it's a very interesting combination of interweaving of both urban and rural systems of getting around. I think now we can move to the next map. and talk a little bit about the zones. You'll see in this map, though, before we move on, that there are a couple of different zones that we were indicating. But this goes into a little bit further of that definition of several zones. In fact, you can see over on the right-hand side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 main zones in addition to open space and parklands. First of all, let's go back to Nelscott. You'll see that there is a pinkish red color. And that's indicating essentially the existing commercial zoning. And that is throughout that Nelscott portion of the study area. You'll also see a similar color to the north of the study area that also is indicating, again, the existing retail zoning, commercial zoning. In between that, you're seeing, again, a red, but with a black cross-hatching with red. We do not intend all of that by any means to be a commercial zone. But it is a higher intensity zone, one that would be perhaps, the types of buildings that are, again, flexible in use, as Deborah was mentioning. Flexible that they can have some retail in the base of them. Now, but also at the top of them, they could be offices or residential. That's called vertical mixed use. So we're calling it the vertical and horizontal mixed use zone. And the idea of mixing uses, instead of segregating uses into separate retail, commercial areas, separate housing and residential areas, is that it creates a much more lively, engaging community when right down the street or right next door to you, you might have a shop, you might have a cafe, a restaurant. So we have to define that very clearly, a more focused, limited area still as to where retail would be focused. And perhaps it's going to gravitate somewhere up closer to 23rd Street, especially if that becomes a signalized intersection, as has been indicated by ODOT. Now, also going along, there's a strong emphasis on the idea that this is meant for workforce housing. This is on the east side of the highway. It is immediately adjacent to the what we're calling innovation district, or an industrial business zone off to the east. But in combination with this mixed-use zone closer to the highway, closer to the frontage on the highway, that there's real opportunities for different kinds of businesses coming. And we'll show a couple of pictures of what those sorts of places can look like. One last thing I'm going to point out here, well, a couple of things still. Marching up the hill, as you go from the highway to the dark red with the hatching, you then go to a mustard color that is indicating what's called village housing. And then further up the hill, the lighter yellow we're referring to as hillside housing. These are gradations of different kinds of density and different kinds of housing, different mixes. And the last thing to point out here are the two circles. Those circles are a quarter-mile radius from center to edge. And we're putting this very basic dimension that we generally understand it takes about 5 minutes for an average person to walk about a quarter of a mile, or a relatively flat surface. If you go uphill, it might take a little bit longer. And we generally say that within a quarter mile, 5-minute walk, people will tend to go to a shop, or tend to go to a park, or a community center, or a civic building, if it's that kind of a short walk. First hopping in their car, it's a little longer. The final thing to look at here before we move on is you'll notice the little triangular green in the center of the hashed red zone. That is the community park. We'll be pointing that out in greater detail in a couple of slides. Next slide.
Lawrence, can I interrupt you? Just one point. This is Kirsten.
Wait a minute, Kirsten.
Yeah. Sorry.
Make sure he can hear you.
Yeah, Lawrence, we just wanted to be sure to point out some of the streams and corridors. So I'm showing some with my pointer, and Deb is as well now. You can see some of these streams and corridors, some of the green areas reflect existing topography and creeks and are not meant to be parks everywhere that is shown. So again, this is still illustrative in nature and existing zoning applies, but I just want to point out if anyone is wondering what some of those green pockets are, as well as the Central Plaza diagram. So thanks, Lawrence. Back to you.
Thank you, Tricia, for that. And actually, before we move from this slide, the one last thing I did not point out on either of these is the frontage lane on the highway. There's a very interesting concept that came up along Baldy Creek. Currently, there are several businesses, such as Charter. There is the beginning of a multi-use concrete bike path that has been built there in between Charter in that particular location and Baldy Creek. It gave us the vision of something that's seen in many different places, but right there in Nelscott. Very much like the slip lane in Nelscott, there could be a new slip lane built on the east side of the highway, right on the other side of Baldy Creek. It could become what we call the Baldy Creek Boulevard. It's as if there's a side boulevard lane that is a much slower moving, one-way lane moving north that would also have parallel on-street parking. And that could also enable a variety of different kinds of uses that could be the front door from the highway into these new neighborhoods, or the new neighborhood. So it's a very interesting concept. We'll show some further detail. Okay, next. Now this is an aerial view of the sketch over 32nd Street and Nelscott. So we are looking southwest. That is Highway 101 that is running from the top to the bottom of the drawing. And on the upper right-hand corner, that is the Nelscott Strip. And that's an indication of the existing Nelscott Strip buildings. And then you can see the blue Baldy Creek off in the woods to the upper right. And then 32nd Street is running left to right. And that is the new alignment that has been developed, as referring to earlier. It's 100% corner, the main and main. Really an excellent new retail potential. And we believe that if this is done right, if buildings are placed in a good orientation to 32nd Street in particular, and there's sufficient parking that's provided, that this really can become an even further enhanced little main street in addition to the slip lane that's already existing there. So in particular, we want to emphasize how we're showing in this drawing the buildings, the mixed-use buildings, would be facing onto 32nd Street with their front doors right onto the sidewalk on both sides. The existing Elk Club is just a little bit off the bottom of the page here, below the frame of this, so it would still be existing here, of course. And we're showing that, just the concept of a new building down in that lower corner next to that as well. What's important here is having on-street parking again in front of shops. So we would very much encourage that you emphasize that you don't want on-street parking to be removed in any way from 32nd Street, but you want to really bring that parking right up to the edge, as you can see on the drawing, as well as up on the other side of 101. So a person pulls right off into a parking space, they hop out of their car, they get on the sidewalk, there's a sidewalk cafe right at the shop. If there isn't a parking space on the street, there's additional parking to the back. You can even see in the left-hand corner of this drawing the existing street alignment, or rather the old street alignment of 32nd. That can now be turned into a parking lot in the backs of those new buildings, existing and new buildings. Next slide. Now, I was mentioning Baldy Creek and that idea of a slip lane, let's call it Baldy Boulevard. So in this drawing, Highway 101 is off on the left-hand side to beyond those tall trees. You can see Baldy Creek down in the depression there. And this is actually, I drew this over a photograph of the space that's actually in there. Those are the actual trees that are in a portion of this. That's actually the pavement that is currently there. They're showing what new buildings could be like and how this could be transformed into this idea of a slip lane, not unlike the slip lane in Nelscott. We're showing two types of buildings here. And we're showing also a side street that is going off off in the distance there. Those buildings, the corners of that side street, we would call vertical mixed-use buildings. They have shops on the ground floor, storefront windows, and then residences or offices up above. And then to the right of the drawing, we're seeing the beginning of just pure residential. These could be multi-family, these could be townhouses, but you actually have the ability to mix different kinds of retail and housing or offices, or even civic buildings, civic functions could be placed along this. So the mixed-use zone, we're not determining exactly what would go there, but there are these kinds of opportunities. This becomes a slow-moving street where people can walk, bike. You keep the speed limit down quite low. Also, a path lane. As you can see, there would be enough room for a pathway down in the green nearby the creek as well. Next slide. Kirsten mentioned, and I mentioned also the little green or plaza. It could be literally a green with lawn in it, much like a couple of photographs we have here of the Olivia Beach Green, or it could be a hardscape plaza. What we're showing here is about an acre in size. It's actually fairly large. It's not meant as a large ball field or a play field. There are fields that are further south of here in the high school area. So there are opportunities for a large play area. Also, this is a very hilly area. So I'm not so sure that there's a lot of opportunities for large, flat, open fields. But this becomes an opportunity, sort of an open palette for what kinds of activities could occur here. Also places some kind of civic building, perhaps a Boys and Girls Club, any number of different kinds of civic buildings can very well with this kind of an open space. Next slide. The next zone that we spoke about, right along there, again, that red hatched area is vertical and horizontal mixed use. We saw this image already. So we talked about that kind of a mix of different kinds of housing and retail and civic and business. Next slide. The next layer up the hill, you'll recall in the drawing, was that sort of mustard color we call village community. Again, a kind of mix of, it could be a combination of single-family, row houses, even buildings that look like large houses that might actually have several units in it. Again, we're thinking about workforce housing. This is not about rental units for vacationers. This is really where people that work here in Lincoln City, live here and work in Lincoln City can live. Next slide. And then the hillside residential. You march up the hill, becomes a little lower density, a little bit larger lot. Single-family houses primarily, but they can also be duplexes, double houses. So again, getting a sort of a blend of variety, but they're not strictly different zones. They have a continuity. Next slide. And then once again, the employment district, that in particular could be out to the east where things could be a little bit more, a little more variety in the kinds of business that could be out there. We're not talking about a great variety of different sorts of uses, sort of the same kind of uses that you have in your zoning code today. Next. And then finally, the street network. We'll go into great detail here. You've been able to study this in the report, but you can see that there we have 5 different types of streets running all the way down to the smallest, is an alleyway in the back of the houses, in the middle of the block. There's the light blue, just like the alleyways you can see in Olivia Beach. The main connector we're showing in a yellowish mustard color. That's the Foothill Boulevard, but also running in on 23rd Street. and then the highway itself, and queuing streets that are meant to, all of these streets are meant to keep speed down to a minimum. They're not just for getting around and travel and transportation, but these are places, streets are places people live on these streets. So we want to keep the speeds down and safe. Next slide. And this is just the final image. Nothing more to go into this. You've seen this before. It's the previous one. One last thing I want to mention here is a green space, a 40-acre parcel that is to the northwest of the Purple Industrial. If you can point that out. We noted this as being an interesting piece of land that is currently clear-cut. So it's, now from an environmental standpoint, it's been altered. We also found it to be a very important piece of land in terms of making some of those local street connections, as you can see. So we would like to suggest that maybe that piece also be brought into the urban growth boundary and included in future growth, whether it is, we haven't determined yet, it's open discussion whether it would be for further business innovation zoning or other sorts of residential. And I think that concludes the presentation.
Thanks, Lawrence.
Up to discussion.
Thank you. So Lawrence will stay with us for questions, comments, and discussion, but this is now your time, and appreciate any feedback you have or discussion questions. That just put forward one slide if you don't mind, just once. But the basic questions I have for you, and you've probably gotten the point already, high needs here, which is, do you have any changes that you would have us make to the basic land use diagram and any changes needed to the transportation network? So that's the main things we're looking to hear from you today. And of course, anything else, but those two main things are sort of critical path for us continuing our work. So Deb, you can go back to the diagram if you'd like, and we can just leave it up. So PAC members, if you have something you'd like to say or ask, if you don't mind just putting your card up, and we'll see who might have something to add or share it, because I'm hoping some of you do. Otherwise, we'll just jump in. Otherwise, I'll just go around the table. You want to start us off? Mr. Baker, are you ready?
We could start with Judy's, one or two of Judy's.
Sure, of course so. Judy Casper, who wasn't able to be here today, sent us good detailed comments on the draft. Thank you, Judy, in absentia. She looks forward to being with us in February. Two of the main ones I put up on the board here, just that I wanted to acknowledge. A few are at a very detailed scale that we may or may not even get to in this planning work. But one, her point has always been to make sure there's enough parking. So she was a little bit concerned with the micro buildings in one of the lots, just a concern with removing any parking and making sure that there's adequate parking for the district overall. So I want to just let that stay, because there's nothing we'll resolve today, but it's good to just remember. And then the neighborhood connector, she was a little concerned about that being functioning as a bypass to existing Nelscott and the commercial businesses there. As I said, and we mean it, we only want to build on the economic vitality of those businesses. So her concern is, if there were the Foothills Boulevard that Lawrence has mentioned, running north-south internally, would people use that as a bypass of 101 and miss Nelscott, the existing Nelscott? So there's, that's a concern. Lawrence, you may want to respond to that one. Because I know we've spoken to wanting it to function as Coast does on the west side of 101, which is really more for locals. I certainly didn't know about it as an outsider until I stayed at Olympia Beach. But we want to make sure that we keep the main thing the businesses are on. We're not missing the highway oriented commercial in Nelscott by encouraging people to bypass. So Lawrence, I don't know if you have any suggestions about how to keep.
Yes.
Yeah, please.
Yes, definitely, and that's one of the most critical things as we were delving into that idea of this parallel street, that it does not become a high-speed bypass. And we know that it's on streets to keep drivers moving slowly. We know how to design them to let them go real fast. So if this is a two-lane street, and the lanes are a little tight, a little narrower than what you would find on a major arterial, and there's on-street parking, And there's not center turn lanes at intersections, but that you come to an intersection, you have to stop if you want to turn left. So 2 lanes and 2 lanes of parallel parking, street trees right next to that, sidewalks, and then houses and buildings facing right onto that. That's a street that you can keep the speeds down. If you start putting turn lanes into it, left-hand turn lanes, it allows things to go a lot faster. If you go above 3 lanes and you start to make a 4-lane road, you really can make a good fast bypass, and that's what we're trying to avoid. So we really advocate keep it narrow, keep it designed to be slow moving, and so people can filter through, but it doesn't become a speedway because of a neighborhood street.
Say, Lawrence, thank you. In the middle of what you were saying, I'm not sure if your audio picked it up, but we had a crashing of thunder. Lincoln City and the coast had a very severe thunderstorm this morning about 4 or 5 a.m., and it sounds like another wave of it is back. So we're slightly distracted there in the middle of your remarks. The lights flickered and a loud crash. So just so you know, so the left-hand turn lane, so avoiding the left-hand turn lane, then a 3-lane design of that interior road will be really important. I'm surprised Dave has something to share with us.
Well, I just wanted to chime in and say I appreciate the concern from the small business standpoint, but that parallel addition is really my favorite part of this whole plan. I think it really enlivens the possibilities for Nelscott on both sides of the highway. And I think that as a local with that secret in my pocket, I might choose to use that to get to La Roca or Christmas Cottage using the protected signal that exists today at 34th Street. And so I appreciate the concern, but I'm on the other side of that fence. I think it's the linchpin to this project in my mind. And just very quickly, I think the land use sketch as presented, I know it's early, looks like a really solid mix, and absolutely love the green belt. I forget the term again. The one-way
slip lane.
The slip lane. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I think that has tremendous promise, and very encouraged.
Thank you. Thanks. Anyone else? Or then I would love to just go around the table and take your temperature and see how you are with this. Is that all right, Soren? How are you feeling?
I think, overall it looks very good. It looks expensive.
Yeah.
As you get up into the hills and start building the lots up on the hill and the streets in particular, I don't know who would front the cost for that stuff. I know we'll talk about it later.
Right, stay tuned on that, yeah.
All that steep hillside.
Yeah.
Typically, though, when we have development, the developer pays. So if they find that it's financially feasible, given the current market and demand, they will do it.
So I guess my biggest question then is, if you're talking about workforce housing and expense of building, would that actually end up panning out?
Well, and we may find that those that are harder developed may be the more expensive housing, and I think that's one of the reasons maybe Lawrence put the larger lot up there. So, is that right, Lawrence? What was your thinking?
Well, the thinking behind having a gradation is that that's kind of how neighborhoods naturally throughout history tend to develop, that you have a center that's more concentrated, more compact, and then you go to the edges out toward the more natural edge, and you get that kind of gradation. It's not necessarily bigger houses. It could be just larger lots that are further up in the hills. Sometimes they're not as easy to build on because of the slopes. So it could mean larger houses. It could mean just more land, more space that people have. Some people want to be in the middle of the action. Some people want to be a little closer to nature.
So stay with that too, Soren.
Instead of a one-size-fits-all approach.
Yep, right. So thanks to both of you. One of the things that we'll do from this diagram, and any changes you make, or the the PC and Council ask us to make tonight, is we'll extract numbers of units from each of these colors, using a zoning proxy or a range. So what you'd be seeing up in that lighter yellow is a lower density or a lower intensity of development. And, Lawrence has, intentionally drawn it so that it's all connected, but really the most access one would have to amenities would be lower down, except for nature, So trying to think of that too is where is community centered around that green space, So thinking of the workforce housing assets down there, and also just the safe routes to school as well. We really heard that really loud. So so where would people with families be living? The more numbers of them would probably be where it's a little bit lower. And we've been speaking with the developers, that seems to be true as well for some of the parcels, or some of the developers either have permits already, or plans submitted already. But for some of the mustard areas who are planning to do different forms of housing in there. So please, I look forward to getting back into that discussion of what housing types where and how might the city or the region participate in buying down those costs to keep it affordable. Seems from your direction, and certainly in our second meeting, was almost the highest priority for this area. So, thanks, yeah. Ms. Wright, please.
I just said I was done, but I wanted to say that the other thing that occurs to me when I look at this, and I've been very poor at attending the most recent meetings, and I apologize for that. But
we did miss you, but we'll get you.
I really believe in the need for as many and as safe of pedestrian crossings of Highway 101 in this. It seems to me the more we think of residential on the east side, the more we have to recognize that the big blue thing on the west side is going to attract an awful lot of traffic. People who live or are staying on the east side will be attracted to the beach no matter what. And if we can keep them out of their cars and have them walking, it might be a more pleasant experience for them and better for the city. And in my dream is, we've got the Ocean Lake Arch, we've got the Taft Arch. If there was some possibility, I don't know how you do it, but to put an overhead walkway over 101 to mimic that arch and to brand it Nelscott, et cetera, I realize that's probably impossible for a lot of reasons, but if that was the goal where you can have families walking across the highway without fear of getting struck in the various visibility concerns that we have on a day like today, it always paranoids me to see Ocean Lake in the summer with so many people running around, and I think something like that would be near impossible to build, would pay off in spades.
Bridge. Yeah, so I just jotted down on the board here, Lawrence, you can't see it, but I'll type these up, some of the key points and questions, and this one is, of course, the numbers of crossings. First of all, the numbers of safe crossing across 101, and then a branded crossing, really a central point crossing. And Lawrence, I was trying to kind of just glance and count on the diagram how many formal crossings of 101 we have, but I think it's just 3 in this study area. At 32nd, 23rd, and then the one that you had through Agnes Creek and over. But there's not a lot. I mean, to your point, I think let's make them frequent enough so that they're really safe, but short enough so that people will use them and not dash across the not choose to try and dash across.
There will be a crosswalk at 29.
Okay.
And right? It's just built, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And we've been toying with the idea of between Bard Road and 23rd Street, it's a possibility someday of a bridge across there, because there's a pretty direct connection there. And actually, we looked preliminarily at engineering. We did this years ago. And it's the grades are feasible, and then you'd have basically exit and entrance ramps to the bridge. Not a cloverleaf, but just up and then down. It's possible to do it.
That would be an automobile bridge.
Yeah, automobile and pedestrian.
Yeah. You can see on the map how close those could be aligned right there. This is existing Bard, and it goes down to 19. But here's 23rd right across the street, right across the highway.
Good comments. Can I ask, Augustine, do you have any comments?
Actually, this was exactly what I was thinking, is that it's to get from one spot to the other, you're in a car.
That's right.
And we were really
one side, the other. Yeah. How to cross. Great. Counselor. Oh, sorry. Hold on, Deb.
I was going to ask Nani, particularly because you're involved with the chamber, what do you think about the business, the mixed use, that whole concept?
I like it very much.
Further development of Nelscott.
Yeah, no, I like it very much. In fact, I can see, I mean, it's reminiscent of other areas I've been in that are really vibrant, so I really do like that.
With the slip off, yeah. Yeah, it's a delicate treatment, and we're cautious of it because of the pearl focus, and so we're very cautious about that, and cities brought that to our attention as well. There's so much focus on the pearl, so we want to make sure we wouldn't, to quote, drag commercial to sub 101, but really do it thoughtfully and also limit the number. We don't have up right now, possibly limit the number, subject to market, and we won't get down in this study of a citywide market study and how much should be possibly localized by zoning to Nelscott. We will write about that, but probably not conclude definitively. We've thought, and Lawrence, maybe you could show on that with the arrow so Lawrence can see what I'm pointing at, Deb, if you don't mind. But we thought about, this is why this is shown and not crosshatched, and this is shown and not crosshatched. The north and south ends of the study area is, formalizing, the commercial enterprise there was possibly some anchor, internal to the district, but not necessarily throughout without limit. But that is a delicate question of how much to hold back the market and where to put it, and with respect as well to existing zoning. So it's something to look at very carefully. But thanks for your overall feedback. Yeah.
One more thing I wanted to mention is we do have on the wall back here a close-up showing how the slip lane might work. And again, it's still in development, but we had recent associates take a look at it and to verify that there was enough room to do such a thing. So if you want to later on go up and take a look at that, we can have more conversation.
Now, do you want to? You can show that on we have that extra slide on the back if you want to just hop to it for a second. I do not have the power. My finger wasn't doing it, but there you go. So there's an image of the Baldy Creek slip lane. It's too hard to read on the screen, but if you wanted to go see the big plot of it that Sandy produced for us on the wall, that's the idea there. And really trying to look at, is it feasible? This great idea, and so been looking carefully at, is the width there? And probably not for on-street parking in every single block, particularly I believe it's the southern end is constrained.
Yes.
But the concept still holds enough to probably merit further consideration if you agree.
Lots of drainage ways on the south end, so we may end up starting it at Charter, for instance, and going up north from there rather than trying to start it lower.
So the councilor had a question, then Sandy, please.
As an alternative to an overpass for the highway that David was suggesting, another option, it seems to me, is a tunnel.
Okay, go under.
Pedestrian tunnel.
A pedestrian tunnel under. Okay, we'll just keep it on the list for sure. And then Sandy.
Actually, I was pointing at Chester, but I do have one comment.
Okay.
I came in late. This area borders on the north end of Spyglass Ridge open space, and I don't see any green that connects to Spyglass Ridge to continue trails that might go through that development. That's a perfect way to get people north hiking farther, longer distances.
I know it's intended to, Sandy.
There is, actually, at the very bottom center.
So just one.
Yeah. Sorry, Richard, go ahead. That's a good point, because that is the intent, Sandy, so thank you.
Right here.
This is further down here, to the west of that.
Yeah, further down to
And then to the west, this one, Richard, right here.
Oh, here.
Yeah, right in there.
Yeah. So that is the intent, but maybe we can make it a little more clear. Yeah, there's a diagram that Lawrence produced yesterday. He's very quick with the production, I will tell you. He generates about 5 images a day, and man, you're prolific. But the one he has shown that I don't have loaded now, but we might include in the meeting summary and online. All this PowerPoint for anyone listening at home, this PowerPoint has already been posted online at nelscottplan.com, so folks can go just pour through it. But there, I'll add this image that Lawrence did, one with blue lines going north and south, showing all the connections, broad blue lines. So we'll add that so that folks can see, because the north-south connections are major emphasis here for all modes. Yeah.
And we had talked about this could be a big part of the Head to Bay Trail.
That's right.
Because it would be connecting the trails in Agnes Creek and across at either 23rd, 29th,
Yep, you can get
27th, and then following the slip lane down or the local capillary streets, and then going further south into Spyglass. And of course, that also is the route to the schools and the community college. So
I think I pulled that up for showing in a narrative too, because that was a major design element. Ian was in with us from staff, and that's when the team went out and just actually walked it to figure out where that crossing would be. It's such a fundamental design concept as that had to be shown connecting the two open space areas. So good. Okay, Allison, how are you think it's looking by now?
Good.
Yeah, good. Okay.
And if you don't mind, could we skip me? Because
oh, sure.
I feel like I've had a lot of work.
Sure. No, that's fine. Scotty, please, how are you? How are you thinking about it? Criticisms are okay.
I was wondering about some of the trails, particularly up there going to the schools. If it was actually developed. Some of our trails are pretty rugged, to say the least. I was thinking even some paved trails up there. Not every access has to be a street. It looks like a lot of streets. I mean, I appreciate that. But really, what we see as white lines on the big map are only streets per se.
we do compare them to over in the existing Nelscott neighborhood. The streets, they don't stand out as much in that neighborhood, but I think they're similar. And Lawrence, did you use that as sort of not
scale,
a template, but a scale pattern?
What I'm saying is the volume of the size of the blocks that have streets around them. If you cut them in half, it makes more space to take care of. And I was wondering if we could serve the area with fewer streets, and maybe some more developed path access. I don't know. That's just my thought, because that's a lot. That's quite a few streets. And then I was misreading this map, this small scale down on the south end. I guess that's, I don't know what street that would be, but some of those lots down there are pretty small.
Some of those are existing.
I was wondering what they if that's, well, just north of that, actually. Just right in there.
Yeah, I think these are existing.
What?
I think these might be existing.
Oh, okay, okay.
And on Dune, off Dune.
And that would be residential.
Maybe these are plotted and not developed. I know one side of Dune is, we had visitors, participants from Dune in here. And I just can't recall, maybe this isn't, these are plotted.
I don't think that's developed.
Right, I think these are just already platted like that. So Lawrence has picked up the existing map. But good point. So, Lawrence, do you have any response to Scotty's observation that perhaps this is a lot of streets in here?
Yes, certainly. I think one of the things that ends up maybe making it appear to be a lot of streets is that you're also seeing alleyways. So the small streets.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
What you're actually seeing.
Is thinking of.
What you're actually seeing here. Are 150 blocks. So the lots are 100 feet deep. The alleyways are 20-foot rights of way. They're the blue lines. Most of the green lines then are the actual streets. You also notice there are no dead-end streets here. There are no cul-de-sacs. And that's done quite intentionally, that everything flows out, flows in two directions. In terms of them being pedestrian walkable places, don't forget also that every one of these streets will have a sidewalk or path on each side. And then there's also actually a lot of contour and topography and the drainages that actually precluded the ability to be able to put in, certain streets. So some of the blocks actually aren't quite large where there are those drainages. So where we have the areas that were appearing to be fairly buildable, we figured let's concentrate a street network in those areas so that, again, good density of, workforce housing could be established there.
That's better there.
Yeah, this is just the transportation network. So the blue and the green, you can see not everyone's eyes, they've asked us to make the contrast stronger. We haven't done that yet, but if you can see the differentiation between the blue and the green, and you can see what the quote-unquote real streets are as opposed to the alleyways.
The alleyways are a good substitute for a lot of paving, I think.
Right, and that would be pervious surface, of course, and subject to Lila's standards. How about Lila? Any observations from you?
Well, I like the concept, and just making sure we don't lose too much commercial area. And so we're looking at 5, 10, 20-year planning for our capital improvements for water and sewer. And so I'm looking at some possible concepts because this whole area will need a reservoir. And that can be a big expense when you're trying to do some economic, roadways and housing. And so we're looking at that in the future as well. And that might become, part of our comp plan. But we are looking at that because that'll be a definite. And so whether you do a 2 million gallon tank or a 4 million gallon tank, that's $2 million, $4 million. So it depends on the needs there. But it might be a really good placement, eliminating maybe another reservoir that will need to be replaced in the future, and have it seismically correct and in a location that wouldn't harm a neighborhood and the drainage, from that.
Great. Thank you. Good. And I suspect we'll have a detailed conversation with DJ as we head into the cost estimating and the financing on this. So please take our calls. We'll be back in touch with you. You always do. And it's been wonderful. So thank you. Okay, great. And your caution was, generally like the concept overall, but don't use too much commercial. You mean so to be cautious about not just opening the spigot wide open on commercial?
Well, no. Really the opposite.
Just making
sure that we have plenty of
Yeah.
commercial on
Okay.
23rd Street because it's our main area that we can develop commercial.
Okay.
Also,
I heard use instead of lose, so it's don't lose too much commercial. Okay, thank you. I interrupted someone there. Was that someone on the phone? Was that Valerie on the phone coming in? I thought we had incoming on the phone. No.
I don't know.
I'm on the line, yes.
Okay. Thanks. Valerie, do you have, since you and Patrick are both here, I believe, do you have any comments, Valerie Green Davis with ODOT? You generally comfortable?
You're kind of far away from the microphone.
Yeah.
Would you repeat that, Lila? Just ask her the question.
Any comments, Valerie, that you'd like to share? And if not, we'll just move right along.
Say it again.
I know there's delay on GoToMeeting, so I just have to wait for a moment. Valerie, do you have any comments on the draft plan you'd like to share?
Well, I think it's interesting. I think it's definitely a significant proposal for really changing land uses significantly within the study area. One of the things I would note, I think the frontage road concept or the slip lane concept, it has some advantages. I would note that I'm a little surprised by the number of connections to Highway 101, and I wonder if so many of them are necessary, because you're creating kind of a cross-traffic conflict in 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 4 different places. I wonder if it's really necessary, especially when you see that one you have your cursor on right now, I believe.
Yep.
The first starting south, it's not creating any cross-connection that's a benefit. There's several of them I think that should be evaluated a little more, because part of the benefit of having a slip lane like that and getting people away from the main flow and the high-speed traffic is safety. When you start reintroducing connections to the highway and you have a number of them, especially when they're pretty close together, then you're creating potential conflicts and you're reducing safety, possibly. So I would suggest if it's possible to try and make it a little bit more of an exclusive flow on that slip lane, on that, what do we call it, something boulevard?
Foothills Boulevard.
Boulevard, because it would not only preserve the character of it, I think that it would probably be safer. I think that's a possible, I would suggest that can be considered. And maybe there's a way to break it into 2 slip lanes in that section. The other concern I have is whether the topography is realistic. Can you move your cursor up to the first connection south of 23rd? Yes. As I recall, and we walked out there together, that was very formidable topography right there across from the park area. And I'm having a hard time visualizing both a road, that kind of road configuration blowing through that abutment, that rather large headland on the east side. I just can't picture it somehow. This is where I kind of see maybe 2 slip lanes north and south of that as another alternative. So I guess, I like the overall concept. You always have to start somewhere. I wouldn't want everybody to say we have to live or die by one continuous lane off of 101. Maybe there's a way of having the same benefit without necessarily disrupting some of the natural topography and character of the stream and so forth at that point. So that's just kind of an overview. And I just, knowing how neighborhoods are, I kind of have to wonder about adding 3 new street connections to the neighbors to the north of this project area. And I don't know if any of those folks have participated actively, but I don't know how they would feel about having 3 new connections through existing what's probably a very quiet neighborhood. So just an observation, that's really more of a city issue than it is our issue. But from my experience, when I was a local city and community planner, those kind of connections didn't receive a warm welcome necessarily in quiet residential neighborhoods. So, now if it were a trail, if it were a walking connection between neighborhoods, I would expect the reception to be different, potentially. So there might be some finessing that would make this plan work for the surrounding community as well, I would say.
Thanks, Valerie.
I'm really happy to see off-system connections that are proposed. And what do we call it? Full-crest route?
Yeah.
Connector. The connector is really important. I absolutely agree. You never know when we lose service on 101 for any number of reasons, and giving the community another route is very, very, very good goal to have with this plan. So I appreciate that.
Thanks, Valerie. And I'm just...
Was that clear?
It was. You were crystal clear. And this is Kirsten. I apologize because we have just 5 more minutes left in the formal meeting, and folks are squeezing this in their workday. So I want to just acknowledge we might start to lose PAC members at 1:30. So before we respond to that, I'd like to hear from both Pam and Dawn, if we could, before we go. So Pam, do you have any overall observations to share, please?
In particular, I like the Foothills Boulevard concept, and I thought that the connectivity, given the topographic constraints, was done really nicely. I think it gives a lot of opportunity. With the alleyways, the thought that I had in mind, I hope this isn't controversial, but was for accessory dwelling units as part of the housing development, which would help increase the affordable housing stock.
Good. Thank you. We can look into that in the implementations. Are they allowed outright right now?
Yes.
Yeah, good. Okay, so we could just note that in the plan that they would possibly be allowed. Okay, Don, Mr. Baker, please. How's it looking to you? Thanks, Pam.
Well, I really like the vision. I think the vision that's been presented well. It meets the goals we outlined. I think the challenge will be for the engineers to see if this vision could actually come to fruition. One of the depictions there along Quality Creek showed people standing in the street. I think today they'd be waist deep in water. So once again, I think there's engineering challenges on the grades. I like the streets. I like the additional bypasses. Having to move big apparatus around during emergencies. Those are good to have. And then Lila mentioned about the infrastructure needing to be built up because we are relying on private investment being feasible to put this together in a lot of ways. And as the city is learning in other areas, sometimes that just doesn't come to fruition, and the city is making some commitments in other parts of the city in order to bring up that infrastructure to try to entice private investment in there. And so I think having that vision ahead of time on this is a good thing. So I love the vision. I think that the devil's in the detail.
Of course, yeah. And
the flexibility in the future, there'll be future compromises, but I think that great vision.
Great, thank you. Okay, super. And Richard, anything from you before we wrap up?
I think one of the main things to keep in mind is that this is a vision. It's not the road's going to be here. It has to follow this line. This is conceptual, and I think as the market comes in, people say they want to develop here. We're looking to make the connectivity and see where the roads will actually go as a practical matter. But this is a vision where it's the type of thing we want to see happen.
All right. Well, Richard, Morris, did you want to respond at all to Valerie's concerns about the connections across 101 and her suggestion is possibly 2 slip lanes? We know there is a knoll where she was describing that is at the southern end of the Morris property right now. So you're pointing out an existing constraint. You're not wrong. We know that. So, Lawrence, would you care to respond?
Yes. Absolutely. You are correct. There is a knoll right there. And I know it seems kind of odd to be showing a street through a knoll. So this is really meant to say, at its greatest extent, it could stretch this whole length. And we completely agree that the idea of the slip lanes certainly could be segmented. It could start and stop depending on natural contours. I mean, also down at the southern end there where we have some tributaries coming into Quality Creek. There's a wetland area there we discovered in the further detail that recent associates have been doing. We've looked at maybe bowing the slip lane out so that it crosses the 2 segments of those drainages into there, more at right angles, lessens the disturbance of wetland. Or the whole piece could be just started a little bit north of there instead, if it becomes too cumbersome. You're right, your concerns about the crossings and the connections onto 101, very valid. Of course, it has to do with speed. The slower the speed might be on 101, the greater the potential for crossings. And those crossings or other intersections might be part of a future move to reduce the speed there, if that's so desired. And then your final comments about all the connections that we're showing, roughly 5 of them to the north. We searched throughout the whole area, we showed every possible connection we thought might be feasible in one way or another. Hoping at least one of them could be done. Of course, the quick report was that if you do only one of them, all of the movement, all of the traffic would go down that one street. Whereas if you could disperse it over 5 separate local streets, capillaries, as you say, you'd have less, hopefully you'd have less traffic on any one street. You'd have a dispersed one. So, also for future study.
Folks, we are at 1:30. Thanks, Lawrence, and thanks everyone for making time today. Does anyone have any final comments before we adjourn? And we will meet tonight with the Planning Commission and City Council at 5:30. You're welcome to come. We'll probably be back with you for a choice of meeting times in February to try and find the best dates for most. And we'll be bringing back some preliminary implementation strategies. And turn it over to Deb to close.
Well, I just do want to give Patrick a chance. He is also joining us on this meeting, and he didn't get his turn.
Sure.
So, Patrick, are you still with us?
Yes, I have anything to add. I just look forward to continuing the conversation on that 40-acre piece. Valerie pointed out some things and appreciate Lawrence's comments. And I'm just glad that we were able to get the grant pulled together for the global land inventory that's going to, in the economic study that's going to help to inform this project and vice versa. So just great work so far. And
thank you for your help in that. Yeah. Thank you for your help in that, Patrick.
I value Patrick.
Strong local partner. That's excellent.
Yeah, so we are getting thunderstorms in the storage tree too, so quite a day.
I bet. Well, thank you, everyone. Stay warm and dry. Sorry about all the basements throughout Oregon. And Lawrence, thank you for being with us from Berlin. And come back soon. We look forward to having you back on the U.S. soil.
I'll be there early January.
Thanks so much.
Can you stay on the line?
Yes, let's call back in 10 minutes. We'll call back in 10 minutes. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Take care. Thank you. Take care.
If you didn't take pizza before, there's
huge challenge because you do.
all right, Lawrence, I'm hanging up, and I will talk to you again.
And then where they're actually voting, so,
How am I going to do that?
I'm just going to call myself.
Thank you. Thanks for your comments. Yeah, it's exciting. That's why we